Have you ever wondered what it's like to work in law enforcement? Here on Behind the Star, we share stories about the Orange County Sheriff's Office, Central Florida's largest law enforcement agency. From forensics to dispatch to the deputies on patrol, we'll talk to the brave men and women who protect our community. This is Behind the Star, the official podcast of the Orange County Sheriff's Office. Welcome to Behind the Star, the official podcast of the Orange County Sheriff's Office. My name is Jon Busdeker, the host of Behind the Star and the storyteller here at the Sheriff's Office. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in this week. I'm actually on location in Sector 2, and we'll tell you where Sector 2 is here in a second. But I want to thank everybody for listening to all the previous episodes, especially last week with the SWAT team. They were great. They have not recruited me yet. I promise you they probably never will, but I appreciate what they do out there. And so thanks again. And this week's been really, really interesting because we've had some really exciting things happen, especially on social media. There was a video posted about two deputies that work out of Sector 2. They rescued a man who was trapped in a burning car. You can see that video on our Facebook page, on our YouTube page, on our Twitter page. If you check it out, it has about 2 million views right now. We've had all the local media cover it. We've even had some national media cover it. So we're super proud of that. So go check that out. I'm tooting my own horn here a little bit. I'm the one that put it together, but I am definitely not the one who saved the man's life. And so go check that out. And like I said, this was all sort of, these two deputies work out of Sector 2. So I wanted to come out to Sector 2 to talk to the woman in charge out here, the captain. I'm actually here with Captain Susan Wallis here at Sector 2. And welcome to Behind the Star.
Thank you, John. It's good to be here.
Thanks for having me out here. If you don't know, Sector 2 is kind of on the east side of town, but I'm going to let Captain Wallis explain this. So tell us where we are. Where exactly is Sector 2, and what part of the county do your deputies patrol?
We are on the east side of the county. It's the largest sector of all 6 sectors in Orange County by land mass. We have 408 square miles of land that we cover.
That's huge.
That is very, very large.
That's bigger than most cities, bigger than most counties.
That is correct. That is correct. So we have from Osceola County to the south, to Seminole County to the north, and from about Cimarron to the west, all the way to the St. Johns River in Brevard County is Sector 2.
And so, like you said, that covers almost more than 400 square miles, and deputies are patrolling that, day and night, night and day, all the time. Do you have any idea why this sector is so large? Because we have 6 sectors, correct?
We do have 6 sectors. Right now we have had a study to examine the different sectors and zone boundaries. And Sector 2 was carved out long before I started at the Sheriff's Office over 20 years ago. And so you're in the process of dividing that up. But back in the day, and I can't even tell you when that day was, this was a lot of cattle land out here. That was before the University of Central Florida. And we have just had a huge growth explosion over the last 50 years. And that's why we're just so big, because this was carved out many, many years ago before the population moved out here.
Yeah, that makes total sense because, Central Florida is growing. Orange County specifically is growing. And what do they say? 1,000 people move here every week to Central Florida. And I'm sure when these sectors were carved out, like you said, years and years and years ago, this patch of land, everything east of downtown, I'm sure everything from about downtown to Cimarron, people have lived there for a long time. But once you get past Cimarron, you're right. It gets to be a lot of farmland. Still is to some regard.
Yes.
But obviously not as much as it was maybe in 1960. And so, as you said, the sectors maybe haven't kept up as well. And so now you have the largest one out here.
Right.
So tell me, what is your job? What is your job as captain of Sector 2?
So I am in charge of the deputies that are assigned under Sector 2. We have a lot of them. We have 11 squads of deputies that are patrolling 24/7. Each squad has a sergeant and a corporal, and then a number of deputies underneath each sergeant and corporal. We have 5 lieutenants, and then there's me.
So you're on top. You're in charge out here.
Well, I have a boss too. So
all right. But out here, we keep saying out here. We're actually off of Lake Underhill between Dean and Rouse. Is that right?
that is correct. Right off the 408.
And so yeah, we're kind of out here, but this is kind of the center of it. But there's a whole bunch of land that the deputies have to patrol.
Right.
So Captain Wallis, how did you end up here in Sector 2? What's your path to being the captain out here?
Well, if we go way back,
let's go way back.
When I started as a deputy, I worked in several different sectors. I started out in Sector 1. Then I came to Sector 2.
Explain where Sector 1 is.
Sector 1 is the north part of the county, up in the Apopka area.
Okay.
So that's where I started off. And then I transferred here to Sector 2 a long time ago, before we had this beautiful building that we're in now.
No, where was it? But was it always here?
No. This is like one of the newest buildings that the sheriff's office has.
It's a nice building out here. It is
a very nice building.
Yeah, windows here. I don't have a window in my office.
Yes,
so.
it was built after we had the '04 hurricanes, so they took a lot of things into mind when they built this building. In reference to, like, we have a washer and dryer, we have a laundry area here.
Nice.
Because when a hurricane comes, we still have power because we have emergency generators. So the deputies are able to bring their dirty uniforms and wash them and still stay nice and clean on the streets when they have to work after a disaster.
That's great. I mean, that's what happens. I mean, you've probably gone through many hurricanes. And you say, what do we need when we need a new building? Washer and dryer.
That's right.
So where was the old building at?
Well, we were in a couple of different places. We were before here. We were over off of Colonial Drive near Dean Road in an office complex.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right.
And then before that, we were at a little tiny building near the comm center.
Oh, all right. And the comm center is also kind of in the east
in
part
Sector 2. Yes, it is.
Yeah. And it's kind of tucked back there. We did an episode there with one of the managers out there, and that's one of those places that you really wouldn't know it's there unless you sort of drove back there.
Unless you're looking for it.
Which is probably on purpose.
Right.
But so that sounds like you've been at Sector 2 for a long time.
Well, after coming to Sector 2 as a deputy, I went to school resource. So I did that for a while. And then from school resource, I went to criminal investigations, and I worked in domestic crimes. From there, I got promoted. I got promoted to corporal. I went back to Sector 1 as a supervisor. Then I went to Sector 5, which is in our tourist area. From Sector 5, I went back to criminal investigations as a supervisor.
I need to start drawing a map on all the places that you've been.
And then from there, I got promoted again. I got promoted to sergeant, and I went to Sector 4. After that, I went to professional standards for a little while, and then back to patrol. Then I went to human resources for a little while, working in backgrounds and recruiting.
Oh, everybody who's worked there has had to go through that.
That's right. It really does put your focus on employing the right people and getting the right people in here.
Yeah, and we've done an episode. If you've missed that one, we did an episode with the folks in recruiting and background.
Yes.
So we got to see that whole side.
It's a different side of policing.
Yeah.
So from there, I got promoted to lieutenant. And then I went to back to patrol, because we all go back to patrol when you get promoted.
And we haven't talked about this on the podcast, and that's something that I had to learn when I came to the sheriff's office, that, a lot of times when you get promoted, like you said, you have to go back to patrol, and a lot of times you got to work midnights, right?
Yes, you do. In fact, when I got promoted to lieutenant, I went back to midnights.
Sounds like a punishment.
Well, I guess you could look at it that way, but in reality, it's one of the best jobs in the sheriff's office, because you really do. You get to work with the young people when they're just beginning their career.
Yeah.
And so it gives you a chance to mentor and work with the young people and really set their career on the right path.
And that's why they do it. They probably put you in leadership positions, like you said, to mentor and work with the people that are coming up. So I joke that it's like a punishment, only because the hours aren't so great.
The hours are brutal, but everybody does it, and then you get through it and you move on. So after my stint in Watch Command, I came back to Sector 2 as a lieutenant. And then from here, I went to accreditation. And I did accreditation for the agency for about 2 years. And then I got promoted out of there to captain and back to Sector 2. So this is my third go round in Sector 2.
And I see on your badge you've been here since 1999.
Correct.
And so that's a while.
21 years.
21 years.
Yes.
And it's fascinating. I didn't expect you to give me that whole history because I didn't know that was sort of the path. A lot of times it's, I did this, and now I'm here.
Yes.
I mean, obviously you've worked everywhere.
A lot of different places. There's still some places I haven't been that hopefully I'll get to before the end of my career. But the more diverse you get, the more value you are to the agency, and then that helps you mentor the troops. I mean, they don't always want to stay in patrol. They want to go somewhere else. So I can give them a little advice about what to do and where to go and how to get there.
That's great. And you couldn't have done that had you not maybe done all these
right.
different assignments. So let's go back even before you were a deputy and a law enforcement officer. Did you grow up here in Central Florida?
I did. I grew up in Seminole County. My parents lived in Seminole County. My grandfather moved here from Alabama. He worked at Redstone Arsenal.
Oh,
and he came down here to work for NASA.
Believe it or not, I used to live in Huntsville,
Alabama.
Okay,
so a lot of people came to Central Florida for NASA back in the 60s, and he worked on the Gemini program and the Apollo program, and then he retired about the time the space shuttle came out. So that's how we all got to Florida. And after college, I actually was hired by Texas Instruments in Dallas, Texas, and I worked for them for 10 years before.
Really?
Yes, I was in security, but it was not my dream. I wanted to be in law enforcement.
Yeah.
So after 10 years, I packed it up, came back home, and started what I really wanted to do.
Did you go to school in Texas?
No, I went to school in Tennessee.
All right.
So I was contacted by a headhunter, and off to Texas I went.
Protecting calculators.
Yes. People think that, but I was actually in the defense group, so we made missiles for the Air Force.
Oh, who knew that? Well,
Yes.
your TI-36 calculator also goes. That company still makes missiles.
Correct. They don't anymore. They sold that division off, but yes, they made semiconductors and calculators and things like that. Yes.
So you said you did that for 10 years, and then you got into law enforcement.
I did.
What was it that wanted to bring you into law enforcement?
I always wanted it. It just, my father didn't want me to do it. He was worried about his little girl. So I did the corporate security bit for a long time, but I just wasn't satisfied. So I just decided to scratch the itch, and I was, pretty old. I was over 30 when I went to the police academy.
That's good to know too, because sometimes people think, I'm not 21, I can't apply for that.
Absolutely. There was a 50-year-old something in my academy class, so I wasn't even the oldest at 30. So you could do it at any age.
Yeah. So was your dad still worried? Was he still worried when you started?
He did worry, but he got over it. So.
So let's go back to Sector 2 here.
Right.
So let's talk about sort of the area. As you said, it's the largest sector here at the Orange County Sheriff's Office, which means there's a lot of land to patrol, which I'm sure has its own unique challenges. Maybe talk about that a little bit. I mean, what maybe is different here in Sector 2 that maybe the folks in Sector 5 or Sector 1 or Sector 6, some of the other sectors, what maybe don't they have to deal with that you do here in Sector 2?
Well, we have a huge, huge student population in Sector 2. We have 3 campuses we have the University of Central Florida campus, which is at this point the second largest university in the United States, right here in Sector 2. They
basically 65,000 students.
65,000 students, yes, if they were all there at the same time, correct. Now, they do have their own police department at UCF, but the students don't just stay on campus. They walk across the street, Alafayette University, and they're in our jurisdiction. We also have Full Sail University, which is down University and Cimarron area. They have a very large campus. And then we have Valencia College, which is over off Econ and Valencia College Lane.
Which is also a huge campus.
Huge campus.
People don't sometimes lump them into some of the others.
Correct.
But I mean, I've been out to the East Campus, and there's thousands of students that go there. And they have security there at Valencia.
They do.
But as you said, Orange County Sheriff's Office is the one that is in charge of patrolling it.
Yes.
So how does that affect what you do out here, having all these students?
Well, the students themselves don't typically cause us problems, but sometimes they don't think about things like walking together in groups and, because people that are walking by themselves with a backpack are sometimes very attractive to a criminal. So you stay together, you walk together, and then you're less attractive to that criminal. So sometimes just being in a particular place will attract the criminal element to come try to prey on the students because, they're listening to music, they're not paying attention to their surroundings. They forget to lock their car. So some of the things that they do just attract sometimes a criminal element.
And you say that as an example, but I can vividly remember when I was a newspaper reporter at the Orlando Sentinel in about 2010-11, there was a rash of robberies around Full Sail. I don't know if you were here yet, but there was a rash of robberies that students that, if you go to Full Sail, it's a very technologically advanced college. A lot of people do video editing and music production. And so basically all the kids there have very expensive laptops and Macintosh laptops, probably to be specific. And I know a lot of them would walk to and from their apartments. And you're right, they listen to their music, which is fine, nothing wrong with that. But you're not maybe paying attention to your surroundings. And I remember a rash of burglaries or robberies where we reported on it. So I'm sure it happens a lot.
Yes, it doesn't happen as often as you think, but it does happen. So we use our crime prevention deputies to, make contact with the apartments that they live in so they can, put flyers up and remind people to pay attention to what you're doing and where you're going and who you're walking with. And if you're going to walk, that's fine, but walk in a well-lit area. Don't take shortcuts through buildings and that sort of thing. Stay on the sidewalk, stay where it's well-lit. And if you can, walk with a friend, and you are much less likely to be targeted.
Yeah. And so, as you said, there's lots of schools, lots of students that are in this sector, but there's also a lot of sort of, I don't want to say farmland, but more rural parts of the county. Because you think about Bithlo and just East Orange County.
Christmas. Yes. The
Lake
Lake Pickett area.
That's all your area.
Correct. And it's very rural, and a lot of people have livestock out that area. So we patrol that with the people that really enjoy patrolling out there. And then we have our agricultural unit who, they do not work for me, but their offices are here in Sector 2. So they're very close to the cattle, and they have a good relationship with the ranchers. So if we have a cow loose, which we do get.
Which I think a lot of people who live in Orange County, very, very urban, especially in certain parts of the county. But as we've said, once you get kind of east of basically UCF, it gets pretty rural.
It does.
And so to have a cow running loose is not exactly that uncommon.
No, I would say it's probably an every other day thing. You'll hear it on the radio for livestock loose. And usually our ag guys very quickly can determine who owns that livestock, and we'll call them quickly to come get the animal back on the property, or our ag guys are over there getting it back in the property for them.
I need to do a whole episode, I think, on the ag unit, because I would love to hear the stories that the deputies have, I don't want to say chasing cows, but I know it's more than that.
It is way more than that. They investigate any kind of animal abuse, and you're right, you should do a whole podcast.
I will. But patrolling that part, the rural parts, I mean, are there any challenges there? Because, I'm sure it's super dark out there. Houses are far apart. I'm sure addresses aren't super easy to see when you're responding
when it's dark.
To calls.
Yes, so I worked a shift with my guys back around Christmas, and we were busy. It was about 2 a.m, and I took a call out in Christmas.
And if you're not familiar with our county, Christmas is its own little kind of town.
It's a community.
It's a community in East Orange County. A lot of people go out there to mail their Christmas cards during the holidays, because you get the little stamp that says Christmas Florida. And so if you go east on 50, you basically drive through Christmas Florida.
Correct. So I drove out there, and I mean, I know how far it is out there, but I had forgotten how long it takes to get there. So I answered the call, and I drove and I drove and I drove. I'm like, wow, I'm never going to get there. So it is quite large, and it's quite far out. So we do have several deputies that work that area, but because it is so large and it is so rural that, sometimes if a deputy calls for a backup, it may take a little bit longer to get there.
Okay.
So, in the densely populated areas, you have more people, more deputies, And the less dense, less people, less deputies.
And that makes sense, though. I mean,
Right.
you're covering more people, so you want to have more
Correct.
deputies there. And so, I mean, you have to, I'm sure you as the captain, you got to figure out your resources, who's
Right.
on, who's not on. So you have to kind of go where the people are.
Right. So they do have zone partners in that part of the county, but it does take longer to get there.
Are there more or typical different crimes that happen more out in the rural parts of Orange County than maybe, say, on the campus of UCF or near UCF?
I would say that the crime is the same
Mhm.
wherever. It's just obviously in the more rural areas, we have less crime because there are less people. And our property section, which actually also sits here in Sector 2, they do a really good job of identifying patterns and trends, and they figure out pretty quick who some of these, depending on what they steal, let's
Yeah.
just say for a theft of some sort, they can figure out pretty quick who a likely suspect is. So they do a really good job.
So another part of East Orange County I think is important to talk about is there's a large Hispanic population
Yes.
that lives in East Orange County. I think Union Park, Azalea
Right.
Park, some of those areas.
Correct.
How does that present unique challenges as well to the sector?
Well, we have a large percentage of our deputies that work here speak Spanish. So if we ever have that issue, we can absolutely, get a deputy that speaks the language for them. But you call 911, you're going to get someone that speaks whatever language you need to be spoken, either someone there or someone they can call on our language line to get the right information to the deputies working on the street.
And I know out at the comm center, as you said, there's lots of people that speak different languages. Spanish is probably a common one.
Yes.
I think they have Haitian speakers
do.
out there,
Yes.
and maybe Vietnamese as well, because we
Right.
have these different populations that
Yes.
live
Yes.
here in Orange County. What about challenges? Challenges? Do you have some unique challenges or things that you sort of have to deal with out here?
We have, I would say the challenges probably is just our land size. We are in the process of splitting Sector 2 in half.
Really?
Yes, Sector 2, they're going to split off a section of Sector 2 to make Sector 7, because we have Sectors 1 through 6 now. So about the beach line is a general descriptor of where it's going to be cut. And that will be the Sector 7 area. So the challenge is figuring out, where are we going to put these deputies? Because everybody has to have a home base. And right now, they'll be working out of Sector 2 when that switch happens. But, finding them a place, an office place where they can turn in their paperwork and turn in evidence, because that would be a long drive for them if they had to drive every day back up here to turn their evidence in. And we're talking about, the Lake Nona area.
Yeah. And that's a huge growing area
Yes.
here in Central Florida. A lot of people move there, and that's just going to keep growing and growing
Right.
and growing.
So they need a place where they can have their office, and where, a centralized location. But for now, we're looking at, putting the deputies out there. We've got the zones configured then we just have to get our policies updated, our procedures updated to incorporate that Sector 7 into the fold of the other 6 sectors.
And is the plan to build their own substation at some point?
I would say eventually, but that's probably many years down the road.
Oh, okay. All right. And you plan to be here at Sector 2, though?
I do.
Or Sector 7.
Until the sheriff decides to move me, I'm absolutely thrilled to be the captain of Sector 2 and Sector 7.
So you talked a little bit earlier about working with younger deputies as a lieutenant, and obviously here now as captain, and maybe talk about that a little bit. I mean, what do you do to mentor somebody who's maybe new at this job, or maybe just on the job for a year or two? I mean, what do you do to sort of get them motivated to want to keep doing this for a longer period of time?
Well, I think the leadership team is probably the most important thing. So I try to set the tone. You can't always be everybody's friend, but you can always be fair with them. So I always try to be fair in, if there's a problem, if someone has to have any sort of discipline, you just be as fair as you can, and then you let it go. When it's over, it's over. And it's sort of like when you discipline your child, you did wrong, here's your punishment, now let's move on. So you make sure you have a really good leadership team. So I try to mentor my lieutenants, who then in turn mentor their sergeants, and it carries on down. We really work with getting people training. It's important to go to get away from patrol for a little while. So our college, the Valencia College, the Academy, has week-long sessions for advanced specialty classes where our deputies can sign up for schools, and then they, get a break. They get to wear plain clothes for a week. They go to school, they learn a new skill, and then they come back refreshed and ready to go, and with the new training that they've received. So I try to encourage them to take those classes frequently, at least twice a year, so that they can come back and feel better about learning something new and getting away from this from a little while, because it can wear you down.
Mm-hmm. Was there somebody when you were coming up that really motivated you to become the leader that you are today?
Well, there's been a lot of people along the way. I think probably one of the most important bits of advice that I got from a manager who has since retired was to move around, to get out of your comfort zone and move around in different positions in the agency. And of course, I rattled them all off for you. So, I have done that.
Yeah, you've moved around quite a bit.
Yes. And some of it was on me, and some of it, other times I was asked to move, or I was told I'll be going to a certain place. And, in the beginning, when you're told you have to go, it's very uncomfortable. Nobody likes change. But in the end, you make the best of it. In the long run, it's for the best, because you learn something new, and then you bring that stuff back to, the employees that you lead and mentor about what you learned, and what they can learn from that, and mentor other deputies on that. So that was probably the best advice I've ever gotten. And I try to tell young deputies that a lot of times they don't want to, because it is uncomfortable to change, do something different out of your comfort zone.
So you've been doing this 21 years now. As you said, you've moved around a lot. What do you think's been the biggest change in your career, or even just policing in general? What do you think's been the biggest change since you started?
Well, back when I started, we used to get in vehicle pursuits all the time. Mm-hmm. If somebody on a traffic stop wouldn't stop for us, we'd get in vehicle pursuits all the time. We don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Everything is evaluated. We have some criteria that we follow now in our policy. Sheriff Mina is my third sheriff, and each sheriff brings something different to the table. That's always a little stressful when you get new leadership, but it's always been a wonderful experience. Sheriff Mina's a great boss, and it's been a wonderful career. I hope I have many more years left, but that's always different. So.
What motivates you to keep coming to work every day?
I love it. I love it. I miss getting out there and, doing stuff with the guys, doing police work. I do a lot of administrative work now. I'll tell you a little secret. Every day when I drive to work, I take the long way in case there's a call on my way, or there's a deputy that needs a backup, because I want to be that person for them. So
does that happen often?
Not too often, but occasionally. Occasionally it does happen.
Are they surprised when you show up?
They are surprised, and I typically say, "What can I do to help you? I'm here for you." But they do give me that kind of creepy look, like, "What's the boss doing here?" But I do that every day. I take the long way to work.
Huh. I see a house behind you in a photo.
Yes.
Is that your house here, or is that
No, my husband, he's a sergeant here at the sheriff's office.
Okay.
We bought a retirement home, and that's in East Tennessee. So when we do retire, we'll be snowbirding just a little bit.
Yeah, it's a beautiful house.
Thank you.
So I just noticed it sitting here in the office. What about, you said the future of Sector 2 maybe half as big.
Yes.
Is that the only future of Sector 2, or is that just the main thing that everybody's kind of focused on?
Right now that's probably the priority of the sector is to facilitate this split. We've got a new computer system coming this year, and when that computer system goes live, then Sector 7 will come into existence. I don't think that's going to mean a lot for our deputies or the citizens of Orange County. You won't notice anything different. You call 911, we're still going to come. And the deputies will still be wearing the same uniforms, driving the same cars. But as far as sector operations, it'll be a little bit different. We have to start everything from scratch as far as leadership and how we do things and how a sector operates from the ground up. But it shouldn't be too, nobody should notice any different when they call, and the deputies. Hopefully it'll be very smooth transition.
So you mentioned retirement. I hope we still got a few more years
Yes,
with you
I hope so.
and your husband as well.
Thank you.
But Captain Wallis, I want to thank you for being on Behind the Star.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to Behind the Star. You can find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Also, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Until next time, I'm Jon Busdeker, and this is Behind the Star.